Looks like the socialists claim victory in a Texas district, which is very interesting. We're going to be talking about that with Chris Talgo on this segment of Stopping Socialism TV. Before we jump into the topic at hand, I do want to put that call out there, something that I say at the beginning of all of these videos, that if you want to help us get the message of Stopping Socialism out there, you can do so free of cost by just hitting the like button, leaving a comment, sharing this video. If you're not a subscriber, make sure to hit that subscribe button. All of these things help us with the algorithms that big tech constructs to prevent content like this from reaching more people. So help us break through that by just doing those very simple things. Chris Talgo, you are the editor-in-chief of StoppingSocialism.com. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. And this is a new article that you just published on there, just like a day or so ago, titled Socialist Cruises to Victory in Texas's 35th Congressional District Primary. I thought this was an interesting article to talk about on Stopping Socialism TV because we, among all of the other things that we do, we have a project called Socialism Watch, where we keep tabs on how successful socialists are, like members of the Democratic Socialists of America are, in elections across the country. And it seems like this is going to be one that you're going to be keeping an eye on. Why don't you take us through this a little bit?
Absolutely. So Texas 35th Congressional District primary was recently held. I think it was March 1st. And we saw Greg Casar, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, cruise to victory, just crushed his opponent by more than 40 points. Wasn't even close. And, I guess it makes me wonder, is this a bellwether? Is this the canary in the coal mine? Is this going to, be fortuitous in terms of what the Democratic Socialists and Socialists in general are going to do in the 2022 midterm election? Or is this a one-off? Is this an exception to the norm? I mean, time will tell, but obviously in the state of Texas, a pretty deep red state, it's a little, surprising that a Democratic Socialist would win in such, easy manner in the Democratic primary.
Yeah, well, so let's just make this very clear. They didn't win the congressional seat yet. This is just the primary, so he only was up against other Democrats.
Right.
I don't know too much about this Eddie Rodriguez that he went up against, but yeah, it looks like our friend here, our Democratic Socialist friend Greg Casar, demolished him. So in this article, you kind of lay out the just kind of what's happening on the ground. But then you ask, who is Greg Casar? So you went through some of his policy positions. Do you want to just take us through some of his more socialist in nature stances?
Yeah. So Greg Casar is not your prototypical socialist, I guess. He's not, calling for the government to completely take over the means of production, but he is definitely in favor of many socialistic policies, starting with the Green New Deal. He is a firm supporter of that. Medicare for all. He is all in on Medicare for all. He thinks that the government should be the single payer and that all of our healthcare decisions should be dealt with by the federal government. He is also a advocate of a UBI. He is an advocate of a jobs guarantee provided by the federal government. And among other things, he is a proponent of the federal government providing housing for all Americans because, according to his campaign website, he believes that housing is a human right.
Of course. Well, I'm sure all of these things are a human right. A job is a human right. A house is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. I mean, that's just the standard slogan talking point of the Democratic Socialists of America. If you want something, just call it a human right, and the government will supply it all for free. And by free, I mean the taxpayers will take care of that. So yeah, you brought up a couple of things in your statement here. One of it is this a bellwether type of thing? And that was actually going to be one of my questions to you. Is this a sign of things to come? And we've got a couple of different trend lines that I guess that we can kind of factor into this little discussion here. One is what we've seen from just the past couple of iterations of that Socialism Watch project that we've been doing, is that there has been an increase in the amount of uh, Democratic Socialist candidates and a general uptrend in the amount of success that they've been having. But then also the other thing that's kind of going into this is that all signs suggest that there is going to be a red wave, I guess, in these midterms. So is it possible that a lot of the establishment Democrats are almost sitting this out because they think that this is going to be a bloodbath when it comes to this election, and that's why candidates like this guy are getting so much traction? Can you make heads of tails of this for me?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a multifaceted question, but here would be my starting point. So, in the past decade, we have seen a big rise in socialist candidates across the United States, whether it's federal offices, local offices, state offices. So we are seeing a pattern develop, a trend develop, where far left democratic socialists or far left progressives, whatever they want to call themselves, the squad, they are gaining momentum on the left. So we know that now. Come 2022 midterms, yes, by the way that things are looking right now, looks like it's going to be a red wave. But that does not mean that within the Democratic Party's seats that they more or less control, that there's not going to be more of a radical Democratic Socialist takeover of those seats. And I think that this is a prime example of that. So the Texas 35th Congressional District was held by a somewhat moderate Democrat, your grandfather and grandparents Democrat, for lack of a better term, but he is not running again because I think you could make the argument that he sees the writing on the wall, that there is a new guard here in the Democratic Party, and they are on the cusp of taking over.
Hmm. Yeah, and another thing that and this is almost like a criticism that I see, like in our comment sections. People that aren't particularly in favor of the viewpoints that we express on this on this show and this channel, is like, oh, you're just the standard. You Republicans think that everything is socialism or something like that, and we've actually, to our credit, have really tried to make a distinction about what is socialism and what isn't socialism. I mean, we even produced a report about like the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, and how, like, yeah, they have all these socialistic programs, these big social safety net type things, universal health care, you name it, but they're not actually a socialist country. So I want to be like very clear about you know uh, about what is socialism and what isn't. To me, big S socialism on a nationwide scale is what you had mentioned, the idea of government owning and operating the means of production. That's not what initiating a universal healthcare program would do to the country. Now, in that industry itself of healthcare, a universal healthcare program would be socializing that industry. So again, I just want to make it very clear when we use these terms of what socialism is. And when I was reading this article, and I even went to that guy's website, and I'm reading through it, and there's nothing in there that suggests, like you said, that he is in favor of overthrowing capitalism and installing socialism as an economic theory from the top down or anything like that. So I guess my question to you is, despite the fact that Greg Casar is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, is he just like a big progressive? I mean, is that am I making a distinction that's not necessary here? What do you think?
I think you could say that on the spectrum of socialism, you've got your ardent socialists and your ardent communists that want government to completely take over everything, totally control, centralize everything, and we would live in a communist state.
Right.
But there are also people like Greg here who definitely have socialist leanings. He's definitely promoting socialist policies, but he is not making that, like that he's not planting his socialist flag in the ground saying, yes, I am a, out and out socialist. I love socialism. So it's almost like he's trying to play both sides here. On one hand, he calls himself a progressive. On the other hand, he's a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So
Mhm.
it looks like he's trying to, toe that line, But I mean, if it were up to me and someone said, "Is this guy a socialist or not?" I would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's interesting because, like, you know, what our second favorite socialist of this channel, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's like, obviously she has a lot of very nice things to say about democratic socialism, but, like, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong here, people in the comments, I don't think any reporter has ever sat her down and asked, where is the end of your, like, socialist leanings? You know, obviously you bash capitalism as being the culprit for so many of society's ills or anything like that. But are you willing to go as far as saying that we should get rid of capitalism and install socialism at, like, the core economic, you know, column of our country? I don't think anyone's ever asked her that. And I'm not entirely sure that she would admit that, even if she was straight up asked that. So it's like, do we actually have, like, socialists in this country running for office, or are they just, like, socialistic super progressives? I'm not entirely sure of that answer.
I'm not entirely sure that answer either, but here's another way of looking at it. The policies that people like AOC, Bernie, Rashida Tlaib, Cory Bush, and Greg here are promoting are definitely moving us more toward that, socialist model. So whether they're doing it incrementally or whether they're saying let's just do it all in one fell swoop, like Stalin and Lenin, back in the day did
Sure.
in Russia and Soviet Union, they're moving in the same direction. Greg, on his website, he talks about, I want government to do much more. I want government to be in charge of healthcare, in charge of the environment, in charge of housing, in charge of creating jobs, and I want to pay for that by taxing the rich,
Right.
taxing the wealthy. So the tenets of what he is promoting are absolutely socialist in nature. But once again, I think that the socialism word in America is still kind of a dirty word, not nearly as dirty as it was even when I was like a kid. So there's still like a somewhat reluctance for him to just openly embrace socialism. But like I said before, I think if you look at his policy positions and what he's advocating for, how can you not put him in the socialist camp?
Right. And I also want to make it very clear to our listeners that I don't condone socializing any industry, even despite, like, that not necessarily making a socialist country. We could have that separate conversation about socializing healthcare and how terrible that would be, and how it would end up in rationing and less innovation and terrible outcomes and all of those things. Socialize anything, education, you come up with bad outcomes. We could have that separate discussion, but yeah, I'm just I don't know. I don't think we're at the point yet where we're going to have a Bernie Sanders type person being like, you know what? No, we don't want our social programs to be based around how much money that we can pry out of the richest hands because they're playing this corrupt capitalism game. We need straight up socialism from the top down. I don't think we're there yet. And if our channel is successful, hopefully we'll never get to that point. But is there any other kind of last comments you want to make about this story here?
Yeah, I mean, so even though we're not at that point yet where you've got, people like Bernie Sanders outspokenly advocating for, a socialist revolution, the fact that Bernie Sanders was almost twice elected the Democratic candidate for the president of the United States is something that it would have been so like incalculable for even me 10 to 15 years ago. So when I look at like the overall trend and the way that the trend lines are moving, it does provoke some fear in me that, hey, wait a second, like 10, 20 years ago this guy would have been laughed off stage. Here he is now, the Democratic primary candidate for a seat in a Republican state. So
Right.
it just makes me wonder if the Overton window is shifting and if we need to make sure that we properly and accurately describe these people, because they're like they're playing that game of, yeah, I guess I'm like a socialist in my policies, but I'm not going to like say it in terms of my name. So I think
Right.
we have to be as accurate as possible in describing what his policies would produce.
Yeah, well, no, the I think you nailed it on the head with the whole Overton window concept, because you're right, and the reason why this whole project, this whole center at the Heartland Institute, the Socialism Research Center, started a few years ago is because we saw this trend line, we saw how much of an influence people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was having. And it's like, if you were to just take a universe where all of the conservative small government voices were just like, not included in the conversation, and we just had the current progressive Democratic Party in place, you would see that faction off into your progressive wing and your straight up socialist wing. And it's like, just that idea that like we could be in a situation where straight up socialists are going to have an influence in the party, like that's enough to justify us having a page like this. So that's the whole point of the Stopping Socialism project, the Socialism Research Center here, the Stopping Socialism TV. If you go to stoppingsocialism.com, you can find this article and more articles talking about this stuff. You could also find us on the various social medias around the internet, whether it's Facebook, Stopping Socialism. We have an Instagram account. We have Twitter. If you look hard enough, you're going to find our stuff. Chris, any last words? Anything you want to get off your chest before we sign off for the segment?
Yeah, in the current makeup of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Socialist Progressive Wing, and I'll throw, Jamal Bowman, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley in that bunch. We've seen the amount of power and influence that they wield. So when we see, more and more socialist candidates running for House of Representatives on the Democratic Party's ticket, it makes me fear that core group is increasing, not decreasing, and
it begets even further socialism and progressivism, because let's say in the future this Greg Casar guy is running against another Democratic Socialist of America type candidate for the primary in the future or something like that. Now the other one is going to try to out socialist the other one. So it's just kind of
and it normalizes the positions that he's espousing, which, like I said, man, 20 years ago in the U.S. House of Representatives, these ideas would have been like laughed out of the room. Now they are
in Texas, nonetheless.
Yeah, now they're taken as, okay, is this like the path that the United States is about to embark upon? I hope not.
Yeah, no doubt. But here at Stopping Socialism, the Socialism Research Center, we are going to keep an eye on it. And like I said, we do this Socialism Watch. I have a graphic up here for the latest version of it, Socialist Watch 2020, which you can find. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for this little clip here. But surely we're going to start planning for the next iteration of it come these midterms. So stay tuned for that if you are interested. But like I said, go and check out all of our stuff. Be a subscriber. Help us break through those big tech algorithms with this video just by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, sharing it, and being a subscriber, like I said. Chris Talgo, thank you for joining us for this segment here, and we will talk to you all next time.
Have a great day.